At 7 p.m., Town Board of Estes Park. This is our regular board meeting on September 9th, 2025. We are on the air on our normal YouTube channel. Anyone who would like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us may do so. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move on to, actually my second agenda item is a proclamation for Constitution Week. So I'm going to read that. It's likely that on the event on September 17th, I will read it again in a different public forum. Office of the Mayor, Estes Park, Colorado, proclamation. Whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of a limited government in a republic dedicated to rule by law. And whereas September 17th, 2025 marks the 238th anniversary of the framing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate it, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and Board of Trustees of the Town of Estes Park proclaim September 17th, 2025 through September 23rd, 2025 as Constitution Week in the Town of Estes Park, Colorado, and all citizens are urged to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities that privilege involves. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda approval, and I'll request any changes or additions to the agenda, and I have one. We want to add to the agenda the formation of the interview committee for the planning, the Estes Park Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. And so if I can have a motion.
I'll move to approve the agenda as written with the addition of the interview for the Housing Board.
And a second?
I second.
Is there additional comments from board or staff on that item? And we can vote on that. Agenda approved with that item. And do we address that then, Town Attorney Kramer, next on the agenda, first on the agenda, after we get to the actual agenda?
Mayor, I would think that that would go toward the bottom. Normally, we we go immediately to something when it's removed from the consent agenda. I don't think there's a similar rule for adding something to the agenda.
All right, we'll do it later then after we conclude the published portions of the agenda. Public comment, this order of business is for public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak on items not on the agenda? And if it's a quasi-judicial item, I would request that that be reserved for the appropriate public hearing. And name, address, and 3 minutes.
I'm Amy Plummer, and I have lived in Estes Park for 45 years, the last 42 of which have been at 556 Aspen Avenue. And I don't know how often anybody ever gets up to tell you all to our appreciation for the time, energy, and heart you put into this job, because it's not easy. I know you have to listen to listen to lots of data and voices, and this goes to staff too. But I really, with what's going on in our country today, I want you to know I really feel listened here at Estes Park, and I very much appreciate that, and thank you.
Thank you. You can talk for 10 minutes if you want.
Give her more time.
Is there any other public comment for items not on the agenda? We'll move forward to town board comments and liaison reports. We're starting to the east today with Trustee Brown.
Second time.
Yeah, well, there's a reason this time.
So I'm liaison to a number of organizations. One is the Housing Authority, which meets tomorrow, so I don't have anything to report on that. Liaison to the EDWC, they're continuing on with the same stuff they've been doing. The base program will be up and running soon. And then the other one, which never meets, is the, what is it called? Board of Adjustment. I can never remember that. Anyway, so I don't have a lot of things to report on the liaison. However, I do have a story to tell. And I'm going to read this because it's kind of complicated, but once upon a time, there was a community in the West that adopted a municipal ordinance restricting certain development in a particular zoning district unless, quote, the written consent shall have been obtained of the owners of 2/3 of the property within 400 feet of the proposed building, end quote. Sound familiar? A trust which owned a home for the aged poor within the zoning district, which was a permitted use in that zoning district, sought a building permit to replace the existing old building with a new larger building and was denied the permit solely because of the absence of approval by adjoining property owners as required by the ordinance. Understandably, the owner challenged the denial in court, and the case ultimately reached the U.S. Supreme Court in its case called Washington ex rel. Seattle Trust Company versus Roberge. It was a Supreme Court case. The court described the ordinance as follows. The section purports to give the owners of less than 1/2 of the land within 400 feet of the proposed building authority, uncontrolled by any standard or rule prescribed by legislative action, to prevent the trustee from using the land for the proposed home. The superintendent is bound by the decision or inaction of such owners. There's no provision for review under the ordinance. Their failure to give consent is final. They are not bound by any official duty, but are free to withhold consent for selfish reasons or arbitrarily, and may subject the trustee to their will or caprice. So after years of litigation and after noting the right of the property owner to devote the land to any legitimate use that is a property right within the protection of the Constitution, the U.S. Supreme Court held that the delegation of power so attempted is repugnant to the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, and therefore was invalid. So I want to ask, does our community really want to pass an ordinance that is likely to be legally challenged if passed, and which is subject to binding legal authority from the U.S. Supreme Court, which held that a similar ordinance violated the Due Process Clause of the U.S. Constitution? Even if such an ordinance is ultimately held to be invalid, as is almost certainly the case based on that Supreme Court case, the litigation alone would damage the town by stalling all development because of the uncertainty generated by the litigation. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Trustee Hazelton.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things from our Visit Estes Park board. Marie gave me the blessing to share these since we serve on that board together. We met at the end of August and reviewed the draft 2026 operating plan, which is a really hefty document, lots of great information in there that is publicly available if folks would like to review it. And the board provided some feedback that will be incorporated into the next iteration that we'll see in September before it makes its way to this board and the county commissioners. We also began talking about board policies, in particular, board and staff policies, and in particular, we approved a social media policy that's related to users who are commenting on the Visit Estes Park social channels, and just some guidelines that staff can legally know what to share, what to hide if things kind of go south in the comments section, as they tend to do sometimes on big posts for kind of influencing channels. So we approved that, and then we also gave input on an event sponsorship policy. That will be reviewed at our next meeting, but there was some good feedback about that. And I'm very happy that we're starting to go through these board policies. I think that's a good move for the organization. A couple other things, the Visit Estes Park is hiring for a marketing and PR coordinator. I believe if you go to visitestespark.com/careers, you can see that listing. We also expect to review the first draft of the tourism master plan. That was expected September 25th, but a little birdie told me that the first draft has already made its way to staff. So that's going to be a really compelling piece that talks a lot about what our community wants to see in terms of tourism for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So that'll come before the board, I expect, maybe in October by the time it makes its way to us. And then finally, we had a special meeting last Thursday to interview candidates for the permanent CEO position. That was done in executive session to protect the privacy of candidates who maybe haven't let their employer know that they were seeking other positions, and they weren't being named as finalists yet. So it's kind of an understandable middle of the road that if they're not being named as a finalist, why put them out there publicly. So the board had that executive session to review some candidates, and I do expect that in the next day or so, we should have an announcement of finalists. And that process will totally be public, available for folks to come and listen in person or on Zoom. There will be a public meet and greet opportunity as well. And I believe we expect that to be toward the end of the month or beginning of October. So looking forward to sharing more about that. And unless Marie has anything to add, I am set. Thank you.
Great progress on that. Mayor Pro Tem Sinek.
This is why Trustee Hazelton gives that report, because my report would be operations plans, policies, master plan, and CEO interviews. That would be my comment about the meeting. So that's why we have Trustee Hazelton give that synopsis. It is actually a great time for Visit Estes Park, because we are looking at some of the policies for the board in general, looking at a new CEO. It can be a bright future for that. So we had a trustee talk last week, and a lot of discussion on actually the police station and the where we want to think about putting that, and Stanley Park. A lot of discussion about that, and I think that was actually the biggest part of the discussion we had. And Visit Estes Park. So other than that, that's all I have for this week.
Thank you, Trustee Eigel.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two things, and first, they kind of both have to do with the Scottish Festival that just concluded over the last weekend. A lot of conversation in the community about the parade and the Scottish Festival's place in our community and its history, and a lot of other things related to the Scottish Festival. I see it as an asset, as a part of the community. I see that there's an opportunity for communication, improving some communication in the relationship. I also understand that there are conversations going on now about talking about going into the future and how that will look. So having heard the feedback, I hear you. I think all the trustees hear you and the town staff hears you. And there's going to be some work done in the coming months to see how that relationship works and the parade and all the little details. But concerns heard, working on it. Also, seemed to be a pretty successful weekend. I knew it was Scottish Festival weekend when I looked out the window and Twin Sisters was shrouded in clouds. It was 20 degrees cooler, and I think everyone was getting a sprinkle at Stanley Park. So I don't know how that works, but it is amazing that it happens every year. Okay, separately, we had an issue come up with the availability of the bulk water dispenser on Community, related to the Scottish Festival permit, security of the area, and having access to that. The concern was raised. Assistant Town Administrator Dan Weber jumped on that and was able to organize a response with the help of staff, the water department, and making that information available for the people who rely on that as a utility every day that fill up water. If you haven't had the experience of filling water to run your home, it is necessary, and being cut off from water changes everything. So I want to compliment the town staff on responding to that so quickly, so effectively, and share my appreciation for being a small enough town government that a concern can be heard and acted upon quickly and with great success. So thanks for that. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Eigel. I have no additional comments, but I'll support and affirm everything that was said up here. Town Administrator Mahalik, you have comments.
Thanks, Mayor. One item tonight, the town board will be holding 2 study sessions to discuss the proposed 2026 budget. Those are open to the public. They are study sessions, so there's not public comment, but constituents and members of the community can make comments through email or at regular town board public comment sessions. Those 2 budget study sessions are on September 18th and October 3rd from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. And we invite everybody to come and listen about how the town is proposing to allocate money for next year. That's all I have tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Relatively short, 3 items on it. I'll read it into the record. Item 1, expenditure approval lists, bills. Item 2, town board meeting and study session minutes dated August 26, 2025. Item 3, Resolution 8325, amending a contract with Kimley Horn. That's correct? Kimley Horn. I think it's spelled differently, but I'm not sure. For Mall Road to increase the contract value by $71,270 and authorize the town administrator to approve the use of $15,000 in contingency. Is there any member of the public or the board request to have an item removed from the consent agenda? I see no movement in that direction. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
A second.
Trustee Hazelton moved to approve the consent agenda as written. Mayor Pro Tem Sinak seconded. We can vote. Consent agenda approved as written. Our first item on the action items is a public hearing. Let me make sure I got the right piece in front of us. Action item 1, ordinance 1625, vacating a portion of Stanley Circle Drive right-of-way. At this hearing, the Board of Trustees shall consider the information presented during the public hearing from the town staff, public comment, and written comments received on the item. Any member of the board may ask questions at any stage of the public hearing, which may be responded to at that time. This public hearing is open. We can go to the staff report. And Paul, I see you're ready to go.
Good evening, Mayor, trustees. The present situation with this request, the town owns the property at 179 Stanley Circle Drive. The town has engaged the Estes Park Housing Authority to manage development of employee housing on this site. The Housing Authority and their consultants are in the process of developing a plan for the property, which would likely involve a request to rezone the property to town board and for a development plan in front of Planning Commission. During the planning for development of the site, it was discovered that excess right-of-way adjacent to the property exists. The applicant requests the town board vacate approximately 11,000 square feet of that right-of-way, ownership of which would revert back to the adjacent property, in this case, the town. Advantages of this proposal: the vacation would provide a larger parcel for the town's intended employee housing. A conceptual site plan is enclosed for reference to show how the proposed vacation would enable the concept. The Public Works Department did review this proposal and is supportive. They have not identified any need for this right-of-way for roadway purposes. No disadvantages have been identified, and staff recommends approval of the request to vacate this portion of Stanley Circle Drive. That's all I have for you. Happy to answer questions.
Public comment. Any person will be given an opportunity to address the board concerning this item. And are there any comments to be made on this item? We do have. And name, address, and 3 minutes. Come forward.
Mayor Hall, and members of the town board. I'm Ray Somm, and I live at 700 Highland Lane, right across the street from 179 Stanley Circle. I have a little bit of an objection to vacating that right away, because that leaves that intersection of Stanley Circle and Stanley Avenue as it is. There could be no room for improvement on that intersection. I don't, take that off if you want. I could stand up here and try to explain to you what happens at that intersection, but I don't think I could get the point across to that extent. I've made a little diagram from the picture that we just saw of what goes on in that circle.
I'm going to give you grace of
3 minutes, darn it.
I'll give you a grace of 1 minute and 15 seconds back for your handing out time. So.
Okay. The circle there that I have circled is that intersection. There's two streets that come together to make one. You got cars coming from two different directions vying for the same spot on that street. Sometimes it's an argument to get to that stop sign. Sometimes when there's no traffic, it's nice and smooth, no problems. But looking at that drawing, and if the car's coming south up on Stanley Avenue, that kind of a purple line there from the top here, and wants to turn right and go on to Stanley Circle, to the south side Stanley Circle, that vehicle has to cross a street right there at that juncture. Well, cars coming down the north side of Stanley Circle are coming down that road, and that's where they meet. You got a car coming one way and another car coming the other way, and the car that wants to go straight has to wait for that car to come by, or they miss each other, or there's a chance of an accident there. There is a yield sign there on Stanley Circle North. There's looks like a V or a Y right there, that little black area. That's a yield sign.
And we have about a half minute left.
Yeah. that's ignored quite often, if not more than it's obeyed. People ignore it. They think that they see the stop sign, they head for the stop sign. That's at the intersection of Stanley Circle there and Stanley Avenue. And the other aspect is just going the other way. Cars going down the north, our cars going down the north, that purple line again, and cars from the south going down to that intersection, they meet right there before that stop sign. Again, it's an argument between the cars, who has right-of-way here? You know, when I took my driver's license, it was the car on the right has the right-of-way. Well, and it's such and such, because again, that yield sign is there, but it's ignored more than it's
I think
obeyed.
the point is amply demonstrated.
Yeah.
You've got a four-way intersection on a
Sure.
T three-way.
And so you can, so what I'm trying to say is, I want you to think a little bit about if you allow that right-of-way to be absorbed by 179 Stanley Circle, is there any chance down the road for improvement in that intersection? You can't create another intersection. You can't move Stanley Circle south area, maybe 100 feet, 20 feet to the south. So each one would have an independent entryway intersection with Stanley Avenue. And I'm sure there's other things that engineers could come up with that would help solve that problem. You know, because sometime there's going to be a bad accident there. You know, I look at it as an accident waiting to happen. It's just a bad situation in that little intersection. I think it's unique. I don't think there's another intersection that I've ever been to where you have two streets fighting for the same spot.
Comments duly noted. We'll have to
Yeah.
end there.
So I'd appreciate that. Hey, thank you for your
Thank you.
time. Appreciate it. You guys have a good evening now.
Is there any other public comment on this item? And we have additional public comment?
My name is Uta Sam, and that's my husband, and 700 Highland Lane. And sorry, I didn't say, Mr. Mayor, good evening, and trustees, sorry. Okay. I've been part of this neighborhood for 55 years. I've been a good neighbor. If this will be absorbed, it will destroy the character of the neighborhood. It definitely will. I don't think any of you have been there to look at the area, because if you would have seen the appalling state of not only the house, but the lot, 179. There are weeds that are knee-high, there are dead trees, no fire mitigation. Okay, so I don't think you know what the character of the neighborhood is. They're quaint little homes, older homes, but if you build, which by absorbing it means extra units will be built, that's going to destroy the character of the neighborhood. There have been no renters in the town-owned home since the last planning commissioner. So why do you need more to build more? I don't understand that. And more units, my water pressure will go down. Forget taking a shower in the morning. And you're going to take away my view of the lake to a large extent, which I'm not happy with. And I'm wondering if there was a study done for building under the power lines, the health. And environmentally, my concern is you're going to have to cut down 2 beautiful old trees to build. And elk. Elk, sometimes hundreds, come and they bed down there. Well, forget that. And if you think I'm the lone voice in the dark, it's because many people in the neighborhood already feel it's a done deal. And I hope that's not the case, but there you go. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Other additional public comment on this item? Trustees, comments or questions for Paul Hornbeck or other staff members?
Yes. This is for Paul generally. If this right-of-way were vacated and at some future time there was an effort made to improve that intersection, because I think Mr. Sohm has a point about intersection-related traffic things here. I'm very familiar with that intersection. I'm more concerned about the cars coming from the left when you come up to that, because they're coming from down below. It's very hard to see them, as you well know. So that kind of scares me too, but that's probably not something we can mitigate. But in the event we did decide to abandon this area, what would be involved if some of that land were needed to improve that intersection?
Well, the town is planning to retain ownership. If the town wanted to rededicate right away, that could occur.
Okay. I presume then there's issues though with setbacks that, if we rededicated part of that, maybe we'd have a setback problem as a result because we'd lose some of that property, or is that not going to be a problem?
Trustee Brown, you're speaking to the proposed building would
Yes.
potentially?
Yes. Yeah, I know we don't have a development plan or anything yet, so it's premature to say where the buildings even would be. But is that something that could be mitigated in some way and still achieve the plan for the building of those units?
I believe Town Engineer Whitwer is present. I wonder if he
Okay.
could speak to potential
great.
future alignments.
Yeah.
Hey, okay.
Good evening. Even with this vacation piece that's before you tonight, there's still adequate right-of-way to make these intersection improvements. We do have a concept already drawn up for what that would look like. So essentially, the southern leg of Stanley Circle, we would bring it into the north leg of Stanley Circle and make a T intersection
Make a T.
further west from Stanley Avenue. So this should not impact those improvements. Those are still viable in the future if this vacation were to go through.
Other trustee questions or comments?
I do have a couple. It sounds like there's a couple of issues I hear from public sentiment that, one is the intersection and the other is just the development in general. Can you tell me what the process is for this parcel? Am I correct in understanding that there's still, if this were to be rezoned, that would be a public hearing? If this were to, then a development plan would be, I'm not sure, I see shaking heads, but then I see the planner. So, so there are other opportunities for public comment regarding the development itself on whether or not this is permitted to move forward? What are those different opportunities for public input and decision-making by this board?
Yeah, Trustee Eigel, the process, the rezoning is anticipated that it would go to Planning Commission for a recommendation, which would then come to the Board of Trustees for a decision.
Okay.
Both those public hearings open to public input. Should that be approved, I believe there would then be an application for a development plan, which goes to Planning Commission. Again, public hearing for public input.
Okay, and the planning commission, do they have the ability to vote in favor or against this development plan? So that would be the final opportunity for the public to weigh in?
Correct, they're the decision maker.
Okay. Okay. How often does the town vacate right-of-way? How often does the town give up a right-of-way?
It's not unusual. I'm thinking off the top of my head, we had a vacation on the backside of Moraine Avenue last year, Paul, does any come to your mind off the top? There's been at least, in recent memory, at least that one. It's unusual that we vacate property to ourselves. We haven't done that, to my recollection, but it's not unusual for us to vacate right-of-way.
Well, so that's where my questions are coming from is, this is the town vacating right away to itself for its use in developing a piece of property for a different use. So I think that the additional scrutiny that I have heard on this action, this is gonna have to be crystal clear on how this process goes. And so I want to be respectful of that sentiment. 11,000 square feet it's a quarter acre that the town is giving up this right away. My primary concern was the traffic. Being intimately familiar with that, having traveled that intersection for 20 years, I know that that's a problem intersection. And the problem intersection is from turning in and turning out, and the conflict and the challenge that you run into other cars. So this is a problem intersection that will require some improvements. I then have a reluctance to give up the right-of-way for this. Can you speak to any other developments that have the potential of occurring on Stanley Circle, specifically the property on the north, that may significantly or in any way affect the traffic use? And I just wonder if we could look at the traffic study and see what that shows.
I'm not familiar with other potential developments. Was there specific?
Is there an open property that was, there was at one time a conversation on the Twin Owls property? Unfortunately, we can't necessarily take public comment at this point. But I remember some conversation about development, maybe multifamily or something going on.
Yeah, Trustee Eigel, that Twin Owls property does have some entitlements for additional development. I believe that.
So it could be developed, multifamily. So this intersection could see a significant change in the traffic. So I think that we have to look at the entire neighborhood about what the potential is for that intersection versus what it is today. So I have some real concerns about vacating the right-of-way, because I'm afraid that the sequence of this will be vacate the right-of-way, develop the property, and then the town can give that property back if it's needed for an intersection, which to me looks like the town is serving its own needs, and I would be very hesitant to allow that process to occur. So there's no traffic study or there's no data on the traffic or anything with regard to this intersection? I think because that's what we're talking about, the intersection.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't have any history.
The traffic study would come with the development plan, just like it would for the property that's northeast of Stanley Circle Drive.
Gotcha.
And at that point, whenever the properties are being developed, they have to analyze the traffic and make improvements as needed. So just like the town or the housing authority would for the property south of Stanley Circle Drive there, any future development in that rectangular strip of land behind what used to be the Twin Owls would have to go through the same process, which may require that they dedicate a portion of their property if they want to do anything. And I don't believe we have any active conversations about that, to my knowledge. They might have to dedicate part of their property to ameliorating whatever traffic impacts they would put on the Stanley Circle Drive.
That makes sense.
So I do want to kind of separate these conversations. One is the right-of-way vacation, which is tied to capacity for traffic improvements. Our town engineer has indicated that there is capacity for changing the traffic pattern at that intersection currently. If the town or housing authority development changes that situation, it would be the town/housing authority's responsibility to mitigate whatever traffic impacts that it creates at that time.
Can the town engineer speak to the answer that you gave about being able to make changes with the area available if the right-of-way was vacated? You said that you could make the improvements to that intersection. Is that for the current use of that area or for any potential development in the future? I'm just a little reluctant to give away right-of-way for an intersection I know from personal experience is not ideal, that needs improvement. It's going to have to come at some point, and if we give the right-of-way now and we come back later and say, can we have some of the land back? That's going to stink. So I want to avoid that.
Yeah, I would say, again, with this vacation, there's a, excuse me, there's a lot of right-of-way in that area. That entire grass space to the west of the mailbox area is all right-of-way. So it's an unusual layout, with that skewed intersection, that Y intersection, but again, there's more than adequate space to bring Stanley Circle back up to a T intersection and then get some spacing away from Stanley Avenue, so we don't have any queuing issues with that intersection. So I think we have adequate room to make those improvements.
And I think that the concern that I would raise is traveling north on Stanley Circle Drive, on the south side of Stanley Circle Drive, approaching the intersection, in order to properly enter Stanley Avenue, you have to look through the rear window nearly of your vehicle to be able to see that. And the angle of that, the way it is currently configured, may be precluded by buildings being put in there. So this entire thing is in a peculiar little piece of land that requires a lot more scrutiny than I think something with normal intersections would. I would say that I'm still reluctant about vacating this right away, but I appreciate the extra information. Thank you.
So if I understand that, what you're really saying is to improve the intersection, you don't need any of this right-of-way back because you have right-of-way located in this triangle inside the circle.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we've analyzed the possibilities of what that intersection could look like with and without this vacation.
Yes.
And with the vacation, we still have room to make those improvements.
And the other question, and I don't know if anyone will know this, it seems like a very odd-shaped right-of-way insofar it's very, very wide by Stanley Avenue and narrows as it goes up. Does anyone know why it was set up that way, or what would be the basis for why you would do it that way? I mean, were you planning on improving Stanley Circle Drive south significantly? No.
I don't know. My best guess is roads were constructed
Yeah.
100 years ago, and that's.
And
what
it didn't
the
affect
right-of-way-
that property owner, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Town clerk, have there been any communications which have been received in regard to this item which are not in the board packet?
No additional comments have been received.
Trustees, any further questions or comments? All reports, statements, exhibits, and written communications presented will be accepted as part of the record. The public hearing is closed. I'll take a motion.
I would move for approval of ordinance 16-25 vacating a portion of Stanley Circle Drive right away.
Second.
Trustee Brown moved to approve the ordinance. Trustee Hazelton seconded. Is there additional discussion on this item? We can go to a vote. The ordinance passes 4-1. Thank you for your commentary, and thank you for your support from the planning department. We'll move on to the next item. Item 2 on action items, reconsider ordinance 1525, temporarily suspending certain provisions of Chapter 1766 of the Estes Park Municipal Code rather than prohibit feather flag signs. At this hearing, the Board of Trustees shall consider the information presented during the public hearing of all sorts. Any member of the board may ask questions at any stage of the public hearing. This public hearing is open. This is interesting that we have a public hearing where last time it was just an action item. Anyway, I don't think it was a public hearing last time, but there must be a legal reason for this. The staff report will be provided by Deputy Town Administrator Dan Weber. Finally got it right tonight.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, and this should be very quick. At your last town board meeting, a trustee made a motion to approve Ordinance 1525, which temporarily suspended certain provisions of the municipal code to regulate rather than prohibit feather flag signs in certain areas of town, with an amendment to change the the date that was initially proposed, which was the end of the year, December 36, 2027, and the motion that was made was to January 6, 2026. That followed a discussion about interest in extending the suspension through the holiday season. Staff did not notice this until after the ordinance was approved, and we thought that the year 2026 may have unintentionally be stayed. I confirmed with the trustee who made the motion that that was in fact the case. We believe that the intent was to be 2027. However, town staff did not feel comfortable change it for obvious reasons, probably, recording a date that was not stated, specifically stated in the ordinance or the minutes, and we decided that the best course of action to ensure that we got it right was to bring it back to you for reconsideration. So the amended ordinance simply changes the date to January 6th, 2027.
Any public comment on this item? There is no public comment. Town clerk, has there been any communications received in regard to this item not in the board packet?
No communication has been received, Mayor.
Trustees, are there further questions or comments on this item? All reports, statements, exhibits, written communications of all kinds. Oh, you have a question, Trustee Eigel.
Mayor, I just wanted to clarify the responsibility for this action was my misstatement of the date at the last meeting. Sorry about all the trouble. And Assistant Town Administrator is more correct than I was in my former motion, so I want to lend my support to this.
Thank you for the clarification. The public hearing is now closed. I'd take a motion.
I move to amend ordinance 15-25 by striking January 6, 2026 in section 7 and replacing it with January 6, 2027.
I second.
Trustee Hazelton moved to approve the modified ordinance with the corrected date. Trustee Brown seconded. We can vote on this. Passes unanimously. Trustee Eigel, you are fully forgiven. Okay, we'll move. Yeah. We'll move on to Resolution 8425, Professional Services Contract with Design Workshop for the Estes Park Development Code Update, and this will be presented by Director Caressia, and you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. The item before you tonight, we're asking your approval to amend the contract with Design Workshop. They're the firm doing the development code update for the town. What we have received is, what we've seen is a lot of interest in the development code update from public stakeholders, business owners, and such. A desire to have more public input in the process. So we talked with Design Workshop, talked over some different alternatives. And what we came up with, I believe, is a cost-effective way to get more public input would be, as you saw in the staff report, another open house scheduled for September 20th, a couple pop-up events or weeks where we would have 8 pop-up events, the consultants going out trying to grab whoever they can in areas with high pedestrian traffic and such, and just try to get more input on the plan. Also, 3 additional community meetings. So they've met with the Rotary, also have a couple other options planned that they would like to get in front of community members. Also, increase of 1 questionnaire into a much larger survey format, both in English and Spanish. So just trying to cover a lot of different aspects of getting additional public outreach out there. And again, this definitely complements everything that we are working with our community conversations partners. They're doing also an excellent job of getting public input from a wide, diverse range of community members. So I believe with this additional services requested from Design Workshop, coupled with everything that Community Conversations is doing, I believe we'll have a nice, robust public outreach plan by the time we reach the end, hopefully the end of next year. So with that, Mayor, trustees, the overall charge would be just a little bit shy of $35,000 for these events. And the contract capped our payment to them was $300,000. The budget is much larger than that, but we had capped their fee at $300,000. So what the request is tonight is just to raise that cap so we can pay them for the services that we're requesting. So with that, Mayor, that pretty much sums up this item before you tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, community input is so critical and important, and it sounds like all of these, I mean, the pop-up things sound like flash mobs to me, but hey, whatever it takes to, put people in the net and have them give input. But first, before going to the trustees, I'll ask for public comment on this item. Any public comment? And seeing none, trustees, questions, comments, Trustee Hazelton.
Just a comment that I think this is the best way we could spend this money. I appreciate Design Workshop being responsive, in particular with the additional survey, because at one of the trustee talks, I might have been with you, Mayor Hall, that we had heard some feedback about the initial survey and some input about some things they'd like to see done differently and an extended opportunity to share their input. So to be able to respond to that in such a quick way, and then also have these additional one-on-one or smaller group opportunities, I'm totally supportive of. So thanks to them for their responsiveness, and thank you.
Trustee Aga.
I think that we have seen an increase in interest in this from the public as the conversations have been undertaken with prior opportunities to engage. So I think this is a good use of funds that are already budgeted for this purpose. Community input is valuable to the decision-making here. So I think that it's a good move.
Other comments? We can take a motion.
Mayor, I move for the approval of Resolution 8425.
I'll second.
Trustee Agel moved to approve 8425. Mayor Pro Tem Sinak seconded. We'll vote. You're good. Thank you, Director Grecia. We'll move on to item 4, which is this is a fun one. I like this one. Purchase of GapVax MC 1510 combo sewer cleaner from Ferris Machinery. All right, Director Greer, go for it. Sounds like a fun device.
So you're probably wondering, what is a GapVax MC 115 sewer cleaner? It's another word for it is a vac truck or a vacuum truck. This type of device is used to clean out inlets, culverts, any stormwater conveyance systems that typically clog up with silt and trash. And so this device would do that. Now currently, we do have some equipment that some of it we borrow from Power and Communications, and some we use ourselves. It's a much smaller scale. It's a small, almost like a pressure washer that we have high pressure water that we spray into these culverts or inlets, and then we borrow the small vacuum trailer to try and vacuum out all that debris. But it's just a 3-inch hose on that vacuum truck. It gets clogged. Typically, cleaning out a culvert or inlet would take a crew of about 5 to 6 people to do one a day with the current system we have in place. And so what we're looking to do is, with this device, it is a much higher powered system that's all inclusive in the pump and the water pressure system. And basically, you put in a high pressured hose that sprays and dislodges all the silt in those inlets and culverts. And then there's a huge vacuum hose about 8 inches in diameter that just sucks it all out and cleans out that inlet. Unfortunately, a lot of inlets and culverts are kind of sight unseen. You don't see what's happening underneath the roadway. So I highly encourage, if you're walking around, pop open an inlet grate and stick your head in there and take a look. Or maybe better yet, maybe put a flashlight down there and look. Yeah. But you'll be amazed at how much stuff is inside that inlet catch basement. Yeah, and this not only cleans out our stormwater conveyance systems, which is very important to keep those systems open, running efficiently, so when there are rains coming, the water doesn't pond and build up into the parking lots or the streets. If it's not draining well, it will do that. It'll start flooding. It'll make flooding a lot worse, things like that. But also this device can be used for what's called potholing or daylighting, where if we need to find utilities under the pavement or under the dirt, how deep is that? How deep is that gas line? Where is it located exactly? Most utilities do not have very good information on, especially gas lines and things like that, where they're at. They've been there a long time. And when we have to start reconstructing a roadway, it's very important to know how deep and where those utilities are. This device can actually use water to disperse the soil, suck up that soil, and find that pipe without having to get any kind of digging going on or any kind of backhoe that could damage that utility if we're looking for it. It's a very efficient way of finding those utilities. This device can also be used during flooding events. A lot of times when you have floods, certain areas that are inlets that are clogged or culverts that are clogged will back up, and the flooding is exacerbated in those areas. We can immediately go to those locations and clean out those clogged inlets and culverts on an as needed basis. So we currently our street crew, and I do have Justin back here from my street crew and stormwater crew. They have been GPS locating all of our inlets and culverts, and they've already identified about 150 inlets that are clogged that need cleaning out. And like I said, it takes a crew of about 5 or 6 people all day to clean out one at a time. With a gap vacs or a vac truck, you can get about 4 or 5 done in a day with just 3 people. So it's a very efficient use of crew time and getting a lot more done in that period of time. Now, we have looked at renting one of these out. Unfortunately, it's a very specialized piece of equipment. You can't just rent the piece of equipment. We've got estimates from other companies that do this. It costs about $4,000 a day for a crew to come if we want to contract the service out. When we run those numbers, if we just do 50 days of the year contracting that work out, you're talking $200,000 in contracted services. This vac truck is about $618,000. So you would actually it'd pay itself off in about 2.5 to 3 years. That's only if we're only working 50 days a year on cleaning out culverts. We have a period of about 140 days a year where we can do this, type of work. We can't do it when water's frozen. But when it's not frozen completely, we can go out there and clean out these inlets, and so we can get quite a bit done within a year, more than probably 50 days a year. But I wanted to use that 50 days a year just to kind of give you an idea of what the cost would be if we rented it out. Now the funding for this would be through the 1A sales tax revenue, split proportionally between streets and stormwater 1A sales tax. And so the price of this quote we got through Sourcewell, which is a cooperative buying agreement, for $618,000 for the gap truck, for the vacuum truck. And so we have the funds in 1A adequately to cover the purchase of this vehicle. I feel like I'm forgetting something here, but
what is the lifespan of this equipment?
It's about 15 years.
Yeah.
We did look at leasing one of these too. Typically, they do a 5-year lease. The cost of a 5-year lease was about $700,000, which was much more, $750,000, which is much more than just purchasing the vehicle outright. And of course, then there's trade-in value over 10, 15 years. These hold value pretty well.
Trustee Hazelton, you have a question?
You took one of them, the life cycle of the truck, but the other was, this is such an ignorant question, but how often do those inlets and culverts like refill back up?
Yearly.
Can it happen annually? Okay.
Yeah, anytime you have a hard rain with a lot of washout, a lot of soil, I'm sure we've seen some of these heavy rains lately, you see all this stuff out on the street, and we've had to sweep all that up off the street. Those go into the inlets and drains as well. And so that is a common problem that occurs on a yearly basis.
Okay, thanks. That was my assumption, but just wanted to make sure, because then if you're doing 50 days in a year, you're not even getting the 150 that have been identified, and chances are you might have to start all over again. I mean, I'm exaggerating to make the point, but thank you.
Correct, yes.
Trustee Eigel.
Is the truck that you've identified on hold? I mean, is it available?
It is.
It's guaranteed to be, this truck's available? Because the information that you provided is that this is a demo truck?
It is.
That will save our community $100,000 on the purchase. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that thriftiness, and I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to approve this money and then have to answer another question in a month for more. What would the delivery date be if we approved this tonight?
If we approved it tonight, it would be here this week. That's what, they've actually roped it
When has
off.
town government ever moved that fast?
I mean, yeah, I mean, but they have the vehicle, it's ready.
Okay.
And so,
Where is it
yes.
at?
Oh, gosh, Justin, do you know where it is? Brighton?
Oh, so it's close. Okay.
Yeah, it's very close,
Okay.
yes.
So it sounds good. You answered the question about days of the year. If we own the truck, I'm gonna guess maybe 100 days a year might be realistic, or 75, but greater than your 50, so our payback is gonna be even better than what you've outlined for us.
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
what's the capacity of the truck? What will it hold? And I guess these are just curiosity questions, but
Yeah, I have that here. I can't remember off the top of my head. Let's see, so, well, it integrates a 2,500 PSI water jet, 8-inch vacuum hose connected to a 1,500 gallon tank.
so it's all self-contained. So it injects the water, it holds
Correct.
what is alluvium?
Alluvium is like soil. You know,
Okay.
it's just.
One of the things that you say that it will extract is liquid and alluvium, but I only know the alluvial fan. I don't know what that is.
Very similar to that, yes.
Do you, you've outlined some uses for this. Do you see this being shared with other departments in the town?
It could be with Power and Communications. They have expressed some interest in it, but we don't anticipate. The thing with this is it's very specialized. You have to be trained on it. You can't just lend it out to someone else. You have to send the whole crew with it. You have to send your crew of 3 people with it.
Okay. So it would only be used for the town, okay. The only other things are really compliments on the process. I appreciate that you're looking at owning it instead of contracting it. I think that leasing or renting, if you can avoid it, and I think in this case, it will be really to our community's benefit to own it. So thank you for proposing that. And thank you for the focus on this piece of equipment. I think that one of the things that, no offense intended, but sometimes we as a community focus on the bright, shiny new ideas, new projects, new this, new that. But sometimes we overlook keeping nice what we already have. And the first time I saw this, I thought it was an opportunity to keep nice what we have. And so I really appreciate that focus with this piece of equipment. And then I appreciate you saving money buying a demo. So I think that it looks like, there's no question in my mind that this would be a good purchase for our community.
So I've got a question and then, well, a couple of questions. One is, what's involved in maintaining a vehicle like this? Is it just essentially a big vacuum and a power washer and a truck?
To simplify it, yes, it
Yeah.
is. I mean, there are pumps, there are seals.
There are pumps and
things like
seals
that.
and, okay.
We anticipate about $2,000 to $3,000 a year in
And we can do
preventative
that
maintenance.
internally with our staff?
Yes, we can. Yes.
And then, I would think this might be something that could be, if we don't utilize it enough, as effectively leased out to other communities occasionally. I don't know if we do that. It seems like probably not. But, because I think you've got enough demands on your public works staff to not do that. But, okay, never mind.
Okay, that's all right.
Answered my own question.
I think, you're thinking we could make money, that's right? Is that what you're thinking, yeah?
Did I ask for public comment on this yet? I do not believe I did. Is there any public comment on this item? In that case, we can take a motion.
I move for the approval of the purchase of the Gap Vax MC 1510 Combo Sewer Cleaner.
Second.
Trustee Eigel moved to approve the purchase. Trustee Brown seconded, and I think we can vote. Merry Christmas in September. Approved. We'll move on to action item 5, Resolution 8525, amended 6C funding expenditure for child care startup costs. It just would not be a board meeting without Manager Bangs giving us a presentation. So you have the floor whenever you're ready.
All right. Sorry, I wasn't here early to get this set up. So. Just a minute. All right, thanks, Bunny. All right, this evening you have an amended agreement with some changes in the funding agreement that you've already reviewed a similar application back in April, I believe. This is in regards to Little Kid Montessori. Susan, the applicant, is here again to answer any of your questions. Really what we're looking at is originally they were in collaboration with St. Bartholomew's Church, which is right up the road. Due to unforeseen circumstances and just communication and misunderstandings that did dissolve, Susan right away started looking for another location and was able to secure a location over the summer. The application is in your packet. It demonstrates similar startup costs and operational costs, equipment and supplies. However, it has shifted based on what's available at the new facility. Now it is only available to give a toddler room and a preschool room as far as capacity goes. And then, of course, that changes the need for teachers and operating costs. So that's all reflected in her very detailed business plan. Make sure my notes. As a reminder, a toddler classroom is up to 11 children, and then a preschool classroom is also up to 11 children. The biggest change in what you're looking at tonight is that we are proposing that we distribute the total funds in various phases based on where she's at in the renovations and the licensure process. So contingent upon those various milestones being accomplished, then we'd open up the next phase of funding to support her going through those next phases or milestones. That's to both reduce risk for the applicant, knowing that there's unknowns when you're doing renovations and you're going through the licensure process and asking for waivers, et cetera, as well as us understanding now, going through this a couple times, what we can do in building these agreements. So the total request is for $138,000. In the agreement and within the phases, we expect that to be distributed in 4 phases within the next year. So, for example, and this is the Exhibit A of the funding agreement, so the last part of the packet. The applicant would receive $28,000 tonight to support the milestones of that first phase. Really, what we're looking at within phase 1, she's already created her business plan, as you can see in the application. She's also begun the licensing process. I was able to participate in the walkthrough with the pre-licensing specialist, as well as you can see, there's the fire inspection and all of that's already been initiated. So once she receives these funds and can execute that lease, then she would receive funds for phase 2. And then we'd monitor going through that before she'd go into phase 3, et cetera. So what we're looking at tonight, and again, even though the application was for $138,000, the funding agreement does state up to $140,000, and that would be an expenditure from the 6E lodging tax fund, the child care assistant account. Earlier in the year, you did already approve up to $150,000, so we're thinking about the distribution over the year. This would be less. We never did distribute that initial $150,000. This came up before we distributed that check. I also have a short presentation from Susan. I'm going to pass out the pictures that she sent, and then she'll go through and just introduce the space to you, if that's okay.
Yes, but each phase then If that phase is not completed, there won't be a payment, or it would be postponed for the next subsequent phase.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yep.
we've kind of got a self-monitoring process
Yep.
before paying out the whole amount.
That also reduces the risk as she got to a certain stage in licensing and then something completely out of her control
Right.
made it so she couldn't continue through that process, that she wasn't having to fit the bill for $50,000 versus, $28,000 or $20,000.
Okay. Yeah, let's proceed.
Can I ask a question? Is any of this funding for working capital?
Some of it will, and you can see that within the phases.
Okay.
There's some that would go toward renovations. That's one of the things, the overall cost for this, well, it's $138,000. If you remember, the $150 was going to be leveraged for additional grants because there were more infrastructure upgrades that were needed. This location doesn't need a sprinkle system. So there's some little things like that that have been able to kind of impact what the overall cost would be. And this is the applicant, Susan of
Hi again.
Little Kid Montessori.
Okay, this is our new location in 439 West Elkhorn Avenue. So we have in this area the toddler room, and then the pre-K room, a gross motor development area, an office and teacher work area, staff bathroom, kids bathroom, and kitchen. We have 2 kitchens.
What is a gross motor?
It's
room?
like the gross motor development is like exercise and movement, music, Yes.
Like an indoor playground.
Yeah, well.
Yes, like this. Like
All those kids have motors.
Yeah. So, I need your support. I need your help again. So,
Susan's been really steadfast in working through the process with licensing as well as the inspections and being flexible with us as we navigated the best way to distribute these funds.
Is there public comment on this item? I don't see any. Trustees, what questions and comments do you have?
I got a question about this picture. On the left, there's a fenced-in area, and I know one of the issues is having outdoor play equipment. Is that what you have in mind for that area? No.
no.
You're going to seek a waiver for
Yes, we can't because the space is too little. Yeah, for 5 or 6 kids,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's again one of those things that was highlighted already within the pre-inspection report that's on Susan's radar as well as the pre-licensing specialist. So there's a waiver, and then also you can use adjacent outdoor space like Performance Park was one of the things that we highlighted. Again, it would be toddlers and preschool and about up to 11 kids in each of those classrooms.
Trustee Eigel.
I have a handful of questions. Thank you for coming to answer our questions and make a presentation. We previously talked about St. Bart's, and I'm not sure what the circumstances are of that changing, but that was a flag for me to say, hey, funding was approved, for some reason it changed. That is definitely an influencer, a factor in my consideration of a new application is that, hey, we approved it, it didn't go through, but we don't really know why. My understanding of the St. Bart's location is that we were going to make improvements to that building that would be usable by either the applicant or any other provider that might go into that space. Is that also true of what's being proposed with this application?
To answer your first question, or concern, wanted to mention that I don't think it was I think both the church and Little Kid Montessori both had the best intentions. There was just a miscommunication about for-profit versus nonprofit of the provider being in that location. So the church and the congregation wanted a nonprofit provider, and Susan is operating as a for-profit.
Okay, thank you
Yep.
for the
And then-
clarification.
And then when it comes to this location, exactly, that's we're funding something a lot different than what we were looking at with the church. This would be a private for-profit childcare facility. She would have a lease with a separate entity.
Right.
I've had conversations with them. They have a letter of commitment within your packet here, but that is not a collaborator or a partner in the application like the church was.
You raised the issue of the commitment from the landlord. I don't see in the lease, and I don't think I saw in the letter that they committed to the 5-year term. Does the landlord commit to 5 years?
Yes.
They do. I didn't see it in writing, so I was looking for that contract's rule. Okay, so this is not, we are not just reapproving an application previously. This really is an entirely new application, an entirely new location, an entirely new set of circumstances and equipment and use of the funds. What is the applicant's funding? What funding are you providing in this startup? Or is the funding that the town would be providing 100% of the funding that's required for this startup?
Susan has been operating under a provisional license from her home up till now, so she has invested, all of her licensing, classes, courses, all of that required licensing stuff. You did receive some financial assistance from ECCLC?
No, yeah.
No, not yet. So she's done in the last year a lot of her own personal investment, but as far as business investment, do you have any small business loans or anything that you're planning on getting in addition to the grant?
I don't know.
So it sounds like this is 100% funded by the town.
These startup costs are 100%.
Yeah, only that.
Okay, so there are a couple things that stood out to me. A fire alarm system, which I read was required to be installed, a monitored alarm system, but not a sprinkler. That's good, that would be expensive. But an alarm system is not free. So the installation and the monitoring may be several $1,000s for the year. So that's an expense that stood out to me. Light and power was included, telephone was included. So those are important things, but I think that there are other costs that are not being reflected in this. So I wonder what the contingency or additional funds available are to make this work.
What is it?
How do you plan on paying for other operational costs or investments in the center or facility?
For the other grants like this?
So leveraging it with other outside grants?
But there's nothing in place at this time. So if the copier failed or the whatever happens when you run a business, surprises can break a deal.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned about that with the town funding 100% of the startup. If it doesn't work out in 5 years, if you don't have the funding to start the business now, the requirement is that this be repaid to the community. This is not our money, this is taxpayer money. So how would you repay the taxpayer money if in a couple of years this didn't work out?
Yeah. So, can you help me?
No, you're okay.
I'm nervous, sorry.
Yeah.
And I want to be really clear. I really appreciate that you are willing, that you are taking this challenge on. Starting a business is very difficult.
I know, yeah.
It's expensive,
Yeah, I
and
have
it's
2
full of
years in
surprises.
I have 2 years working in that. I know it's very difficult for me, and, but I'm trying.
And if this was my money and I said, sure, here's the
I
money,
know,
good
yes.
luck, I would take the risk. But I'm cautious about taking this risk with taxpayer money for this purpose. So for us to fund a profit business, 100%, I'm jumping into this very slowly. So I think there are a lot of questions that are reasonable to anticipate. The lease, if we don't make it 5 years, alarm, the no outdoor area. Do you have, so I understand there's a plan by the river and the park for
Yes.
small children to play outside.
Yes,
So I would like to know more about that. If the town is funding this for-profit business, what if you decide to move? What if you decide there's a better space that becomes available? How will that figure into this plan?
For the waiver to the park?
If you decide that 439 West Elkhorn is not the best location, and you find a better location, they come up occasionally.
We don't have any more here in Estes Park.
You never know. I'm surprised at the number of things we talk about we don't expect. What, and maybe Carly, you can address this, is how would this agreement work if there was a significant change in the circumstances to this arrangement?
Yeah, so as it states in there, that is, a disadvantage to providing large sums of money like this. We don't know what we don't know. So we've done as much due diligence as we can in asking the landlord to commit to 5 years. I'm sorry that's not in the packet, that I have that in writing from the landlord. In the same fashion, Susan commits to providing childcare whether it's at this location or not. So if something happens and this location is no longer available that we can't anticipate, Susan's committed to finding another location and doing the best she can to offer the same, if not more, childcare at a different location. Maybe Attorney Kramer can help me answer some of those, but again, I don't think all we can do is try to mitigate the risk as much as possible moving forward. And as a business owner, you know that there are just some things we can't anticipate. The intent would be that we provide a framework around her, whether that be through the Small Business Administration. She works with ECCLC and EVIX in a number of different ways to help not only with childcare licensing, but running a small business. It's definitely our intent to not just give the money and say best of luck, but really provide a support system around her. We're just the financial entity, a large
Essentially,
financial
we're
entity.
providing a grant of the community's money to provide a service to the community. So I understand that entirely. My reluctance is this is the part of this entire program in collecting this tax, in giving a for-profit business this size of a grant without a contingency, without backup funding, and potentially a tremendous amount of risk. And we have to weigh that against the benefit. And I don't want to be negative Nelly, but I would be reluctant as an investor to make this investment. And I want to be honest and upfront about that in this circumstance.
And I think when we look at our funding plan and I see, capital facility expenditures as one of our top 4 priorities, I want to be able to present these opportunities for us to invest in that and reinvest in that in the community. There's been a variety of providers that have come to us, and you get to a certain point and it falls apart because there's a lot of barriers before an applicant even gets here.
I would feel better if there
was
a backup plan, if there was an investor, if there was, I would anticipate that you or the town would not say, we'll give you an additional something. Do you anticipate that being a request if there's a problem that comes up? Would the town provide additional funding to support a contingency?
I would think I would be obligated to bring any request to the board to consider. I think it's in the same fashion that we have the YMCA or Boys and Girls Club or Mountaintop request funds when something comes up unexpected. That would be something that we would, decide based on what our funding stream looks like and what the, proposed budget looks like. How are we able to step in and help? I know I say this a lot, but, that's the intent of these funds, and that's how I present it to you all and saying, we have these funds, what are we going to do with it? Here's an opportunity. I completely understand the risk that you're looking at, which is why it was included in the packet as a disadvantage. We don't know what next month could look like for childcare. We might need $300,000 next month.
Sure.
I can't anticipate that, but I do feel like this is our best investment with what we have right now.
And the last comment that I have is that this decision tonight on this issue will set a precedence for aspiring business owners who would like 100% startup funds from the town of Estes Park to provide a service for our community. And so weighing the risk and the benefit, I think, is really critical at this point. Thank you for making the presentation.
I hope we have people come and say, ooh, I want to be a startup childcare provider, and the town could help help me get off my feet. I hope that would be an ideal situation. I think I wanted to thank you for the very detailed packet item, like all the items in the packet and the presentation. I think, and full disclosure, I've worked with Susan before. We both worked at the library, and Susan's attention to detail in this business plan was really impressive to me. It shows that she has really thought this through, has been attentive to the work that she's done in building, her business, as well as the anticipated, what she knows and what she knows about what business could be, and we all learn as we go, certainly. But I thought this was just such a well-detailed plan. There was so much information, even that letter from Nancy that you included too, saying that Susan's licensing and what was pending.
Thank you.
So I appreciated that. This is appealing to me in particular, actually probably more than the original application we approved, because of what we've been talking about recently, which is providing a variety of options for parents and guardians in our community for their kids. And I think, for some folks, a childcare facility being located in a church could be a benefit, and for some it could be a detractor. So this is an appealing application for me. I think it fits a lot of what we've talked about in terms of meeting different pockets of needs in the community. And I think the amount of risk mitigation that you have done as staff and that Susan has provided in her detail, we only know what we know. And with anything that we do, what we just approved with that truck, we could get that truck and next week it could break down, right? So we just have to make decisions based on the best information we have. And I'm hopeful, I'm gonna put a lot of hope in this, but I also put a lot of trust in it because I think the work has been done very clearly. And I know, Susan, too, you've worked with EVIX and some other organizations in our community to just make sure you have that framework of support, as Carly mentioned. So I'm looking forward to supporting this tonight.
Thank you.
Trustee Brown.
So I share some of the thoughts of my prior trustees. My main financial concern is working capital, because it does take a while before you're bringing in revenue to pay your ongoing expenses. And so I do think it was a pretty thorough business plan. I don't know if you've worked with the Small Business Development Center at all, but they're a great resource for this. And it is different when you're entering a business as opposed to working for someone else. Really, really different. And you'll find you don't have any time of your own anymore.
I think she's experienced that.
Yeah. And the one other thing I would say, and I kind of disagree with Trustee Eigel on this. I don't care that you're for-profit or nonprofit. It's not like this is a venture that's going to make you rich. It just isn't. It isn't. And in my experience, and I've worked with lots of nonprofits, a nonprofit is a business just like a for-profit, and you've got to, make the money work. And nonprofits siphon off income in form of salaries to people. So in the end, the nonprofit doesn't earn any money because the money's going out to the people that are working there. So I'm not really troubled by that. I think that, obviously we've given money to for-profit companies before. We did that with respect to the Loop in particular. And I'm very encouraged by some of what I'm hearing about you in particular, because who's running it makes a huge difference. And so I'm going to support this. I think there is a risk, obviously, but this is why we've got the money, is to take, nothing is risk-free. So this seems like a good bet to me.
Mayor Pro Tem Sinek.
So I'm supportive, but I have a few questions about even the whole program. The whole 5 years, if it doesn't work out and you supposedly have to pay back the money. And this is a question I've had since the beginning of time when we started talking about these. What holds you, to paying that back? Is there a signed contract that she owes the money and then, we're going to go after her legally? I mean, well, and I see you're nodding your head, and I know there's a signed contract. The question is, do we go after her legally? Because we talked about this once before. And sometimes it costs more to go after somebody legally that you're not going to get it from than it does, whatever.
Defer to Attorney Kramer.
Yeah, so it's not about you. It's
Right.
about the whole.
It's just a policy
Yes.
question, yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm nodding my head at the whole question. So, yes, there's a signed contract. Yes, there's risk anyway. Yes, we could go after Susan for that money back. And yes, that money might not be available to pay the town back, whether we go after her or not. So all of that is true.
That makes me feel so much more comfortable. I've had this question since the beginning. It has nothing to do with you. And I guess what I'd like to do is maybe if we start seeing this a problem,
Sure.
okay, I'm willing to take this risk on you.
Yeah, I know.
Because but if we start seeing this a problem, I think that we're going to have to be looking at a policy change. And hopefully it's not a problem. And hopefully we don't, because, I get starting a business. I started my business with $16,000 of cash. That was it, And so there is a struggle the first few years. And I would like to have had $140,000 from the town to help my business start. And most of the people here that started a business didn't have that. So I just want to make sure that we understand the accountability, that we're actually getting that from taxpayer money, and the consequences of not following through or having a problem not following through. And like I said, it is not directed towards you. It's directed to the whole thing, because it gives me a little angst to say, here's 140,000 to start up your business, because there are a lot of people that don't get that to start up their business. And so, but I do understand it's a community need. So that's why we're doing it. We're not doing it just to give out money. But I do have that angst about it. I am supportive and I will be voting yes for it. But I want to make that on record that if it becomes this ongoing issue, that we do something to change that policy.
Every time we bring these applications or these new scenarios to you all, staff are always taking all the comments and internalizing that for the next conversation, because as much as we've landed the plane, there's still a lot for us to learn and things that we don't know. So in a similar way, in investing, a ton of money into capital expense, providing subsidies for livable wages is a similar conversation, right? And so appreciate all of the robust conversation and feedback. And, I won't take that back just for this scenario, but in all the other scenarios that we'll be bringing back to you.
I think I know the answer to this, but the town is not guaranteeing the lease for the property, are they? Are we?
No, I don't, we're not guaranteeing any lease.
No.
We have
No,
a commitment
okay.
from the landlord stating that they have
Yep.
her as a tenant for 5
Or is
years.
it? Okay, thank you.
There's a movie from 40 years ago where the last line is, sometimes you just have to have faith in people. Do I have a motion?
I move for the approval of Resolution 85-25.
I second.
Any further comments? We'll vote. I'm looking forward to 2 or 3 years down the line when you're running very nicely and successfully.
Thank you so much.
Good stuff.
I'll be giving you updates during your
Thank you.
normal reports as well.
And
Thank you.
yeah, thanks much. I see Director Bergston moving forward. However, we are going to talk about the added action item first that we added on the agenda when we approved the agenda at the beginning. This is to appoint town board members to the interview committee for the vacancy on the Estes Park Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. The present situation, the Estes Park Housing Authority has one opening with resignation of Phil Frank for a term expiring on April 30th, 2029. Terms on the authority's board are for 5-year terms. The position was advertised with applications due by September 8th, 2025. 2 applications were received for the open position. Interviews would take place depending on the schedules of the interview committee. The proposal, Policy 101, Section 6 states all applicants for town board committees are to be interviewed by the town board or its designee. Any designee will be appointed by the town board. Therefore, 2 members of the board would interview all interested applicants for the board commission positions. Advantages, process will move forward and we won't see weeks go by without the opportunity to interview. No disadvantages were identified. So we need to appoint 2 town board members. Trustee Brown is already on the Housing Authority Board and would be the de facto first member. I am happy to serve as the second member of that interview committee, and unless there is some discussion or comments otherwise.
Mayor, I was prepared to make a motion. However, I'll let Mark go first.
I was going to accept your nomination for the position. I'm interested in this position, and I would like to have the opportunity to participate in this.
I will defer.
All right, then, go ahead, Kirby.
No, you can do it.
My neck has limits.
Nope, go ahead.
I move to approve the appointment of trustees Brown and Eigel to the Estes Park Housing Authority Board of Commissioners Interview Committee.
I'll second.
We can vote on that motion. Approved. Trustee Brown and Trustee Eigel can work with the appropriate, I think it's from the town clerk's office, to get the schedule going for that. So thanks for that. Ruben, we'll move forward now with the report and discussion item. A review of the amended and restated organic contract with Platte River Power Authority. I'll give a little bit of preface since I sit on the board along with Director Bergston in representing Estes Park. I've mentioned this before. I think when we were going to put it on the agenda, that the organic contract of many decades is up for renewal. Most of the changes, and you'll see those changes in the red line and the new version, are just bringing language up to modern times because the original organic contract was written many decades ago. But you'll have the opportunity to see that. The reason we're bringing it forth as a report and discussion item, not to steal your thunder, is simply because we didn't get it to you before this meeting. We're still on good schedule. This gives us the opportunity for you to look that over and be ready for an actual action item 2 weeks from today, I think is what the plot and plan is. Town Attorney Kramer, Town Administrator Mahalik, correct me if I've said anything amiss with that, and I'll turn it over to Director Bergston for additional comments.
Thank you, Mayor. So what you have in front of you that I handed out is the current red line versions that we were given on last Friday. This is what Bunny Beers calls our public service announcement. So we're letting you know this up front. Attorney Kramer has been working on this, so he's very familiar with all the red lines, and I am going to give you my personal characterization of what this is. This is a 1975 contract that hasn't really changed much. So both the power supply agreement and the organic contract has some pretty outdated language in it. I think there's some language in there that says all the board packets have to be hand delivered. So switching to things like we can email it. One of the major reasons these are looked at maybe 10, maybe 8 years, is to extend the term of the agreement. And the extension of the term agreement is a due diligence on financial ratings. So Platte River makes a lot of big investments, a lot of big bonds that are required. And so this current modification takes it out to 2075, I believe. There's also something happening in the industry, we've talked about it a number of times in the past, that the electric industry is modernizing. Just so happens when you modernize, you don't really have to be so decentralized, and so there's a lot of functions that can be centralized under Platte River. So some of the language is also clarifying that the municipalities have the right to, I think there's a weird word, basically give that authority to Platte River to run some of those services. And there's some really awkward language about how the municipal boards, bodies assign directors. So it's automatically a mayor, but it doesn't have to be a mayor. And it's typically a utility director, but doesn't have to be a utility director. There's been some liberties taken with that in the past, so it's tightening up some language around the fact that the people that get appointed have to have the best interest of Platte River in mind and the municipalities. So that's a little bit better direction there. The other thing that's happening is PRPA is joining an organized market. Next year, April, May, they will be operating in what's called the RTO West organized market. And that means that their transactions are going to look different, which means there's going to be some implications in the power supply agreement. So some change in language there. I have a 39 slide presentation that I could give you, but based on Bunny's advice, I decided not to. That is, it's basically a item by item summary of why some of this language is changing. And essentially, when you read through the summaries, you're going to read about exactly what I just said. There's a lot of language that's creating flexibility, modernizing the language, updating the term, with those extra responsibilities that we anticipate Platte River taking on because consolidation, mergers, you might call it. There's also the ability for the general manager to appoint officers in addition to the PRPA board. So a lot of little nuances. I will say I appreciate the work that PRPA put into this because it really did look like a 1975's document that's getting updated. So with that said, I hope to get additional materials to you as soon as possible. If not, they will be published in the for the next town board meeting.
And I'll point out also in addition that all 4 municipalities are going through this process. They're at varying stages of it, although in the next 3 to 5 weeks, I believe all of them come to a vote of their appropriate town councils. The amended contract for the supply of electric power and energy is specific to us, and each of the other 3 municipalities have a specific version to them. The organic contract is common between all 4 municipalities. We continue to enjoy a wonderful position in this Platte River Power organization. I still think it was a brilliant move for Estes Park to be an equal share partner with Fort Collins, Loveland, and Longmont, who it's of great advantage to us in a lot of ways to be part of this. We don't have the resources to build our own virtual power plant to do all of these other kind of services. We get to take advantage of that centralization and unification from Platte River Power. But anyway, there's no action required tonight, but any questions or comments you have for Ruben or for me, feel free to ask Trustee Idle.
Ruben, can this be, because we're looking at it, considering it, but it's not available to the public, is this something we can add to our packet and that slide presentation, can that packet be amended so it is available for review, what we have in front of us?
The items that Director Bergston handed out can be and will be added to the packet as part of the record.
Okay,
We have
yep.
not been provided said presentation. It's my understanding that that's going to be available for the next meeting.
Okay, yep, I just think it's appropriate for whatever we have for the public to have access to. Thank you.
Trustee Brown.
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, I think I know some of the answers, but the voting rights of the participating parties in the organic contract are not changed from the original contract, correct?
Correct.
So effectively, we have equal voting rights to the other
Yes.
municipalities. Okay, that's kind of the key item for me on this. On the power agreement, I was kind of surprised to see this, but on page 3 of 11, the red line, it talks about how Estes Park may purchase energy from retail customers with on-premises energy production facilities. So it has come up occasionally about people putting solar on the roofs. And I had thought that it was not to our benefit to do that, and it was much better to buy solar from PRPA for, I'm not sure why that was. And I'm not sure that it's all that beneficial to the retail customer either, because I'm not sure they get the same rate as they're charged for energy, you know. So, but we do, have we had that power to do that? And we just haven't done it much? Is that?
Oh, it's a state law. So it's called net metering.
Net metering, and we've got,
So
we've
been doing it forever.
So we've got to do it, and, but that net metering is not necessarily terribly advantaged to the property owner.
You know, it's a personal, people make a personal choice.
Yeah, it's
to
not, yeah,
put solar
but
panels on.
financially, they don't get paid as much, because they get a wholesale rate for what they're selling to the grid, but then have to pay retail for what they get, right?
Essentially, yes. They
That's
compete with Platte River, so it's kind of hard to compete with Platte River. And there's a whole lot of administrative costs that go with that. So we do reduce it by, I think, 1 cent a kilowatt hour.
Okay. How many of those do we have in the community? I mean,
I think as a percentage, we have the highest percentage, but as a number goes, I think maybe 400, 200.
That many?
I'd be lying.
surprised.
I can get an answer.
No, I'm
I'll
just
get a real
curious.
answer to you.
So we have a high percentage of our property owners. that
Relative to the other communities, yeah.
Relative to the other communities.
Trustee Brown, maybe I can help with one of your earlier questions. Ruben can let me know if I'm getting off base here. But what you're seeing is the deletion of the 120% and the inclusion of more general language so that we can accept power in line with our policies. My understanding of that is that the 120% is what we have to accept per state law, and other municipalities that are members of Platte River might have other ideas about wanting to accept more. We don't have to. We can still control it at the 120% level. Director Bergston, do I have that right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Years ago, you came down to my level when it came to electricity and solar power, which was way down from your level. But you talked about like the grid and the highway and the cars coming in at a different speed and stuff like that. With regards to this, could you give like a 30-second?
Relative to net metering, you mean?
Yeah, with people having solar on the roofs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, we require, and it's not uncommon to require a lockable disconnect for those systems because they have the capacity to be able to degrade, and then, you know, as we talked about, you have to merge onto the highway at the exact same frequency and speed, and so if their equipment starts going wonky, we need to be able to disconnect it. It's man, technology's changing a lot. And we just had this conversation at PRPA board meeting that the batteries that we're going to be getting here in our town and the other communities will get are actually, they call them grid forming inverters, which I'm shocked we're getting grid forming inverters, but those are the devices that actually help maintain that good, stable power.
Okay, good.
So, yeah, the current, I'm not gonna say anything bad about solar, because people that love solar. But the reality is, they don't always produce electricity when you want it. In fact, they're really good at producing electricity not at the peak hours of the day. And so that's where batteries become extremely valuable, and that's why we're gonna be putting batteries out in the communities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Town attorney.
Mayor, I'll just follow up on timing. I haven't seen an item come through yet for approval of these changes at the next meeting. That might be coming, but it might be the next meeting, it might be the meeting after that. I just wanted to check and see how firmly you want it to be at the next meeting.
I would prefer it at the next meeting for it to be an action item, but we can continue that to a following meeting if people aren't quite ready yet to come to a vote.
Well, we'll work on getting that together.
Yeah. To stay in relative sync with the other municipalities, it'd be good at that September 23rd. If it does fall to the following one, that would be kind of the outer that we'd want to hit, but we've got a couple options there.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's not, I'm using the same ordinance that we used 6 years ago. So, and the only reason you didn't get it today was because the files that PRPA gave us have security locks on passwords, which means I can't upload it to Laserfish. Little did I know, but thanks to Bunny, I got that clarified, so they'll get scanned in and uploaded tomorrow.
All right. Well, thanks Director Bergston. Thanks Officer Michala, AKA Officer Paul, for keeping us safe. And with that, this meeting